Welcome to the Home Stagers and Designers on Fire podcast, where we help you attract more ideal clients, up-level your business, make more money, and still have a smokin' hot life. Hosted by best-selling author, coach, and speaker Marianne Cherico, this podcast focuses on business and mindset strategies that enable you to create a life and business by design. Now, let's get fired up.
I am so excited to introduce you to my guest today. Johnathan H. Miller is a Virginia-based media personality, author, artist, entrepreneur, and business strategist known for his direct perspective on design, positioning, and value. Through television appearances, publishing, and brand storytelling, he delivers sharp, practical insight into how presentation influences perception and how perception drives results. Johnathan has 15 years in the staging industry and 20 years in the design industry. And he's the author of a new book, Why Underpricing Kills Design, and you have to get this book. It's a standards-driven book for design professionals ready to stop underpricing and lead with authority. Johnathan's business offers luxury staging, short-term rental, vacation rental, and he has a plethora of experience. He's also a TV star, and he's going to tell you about that as well. And he has 13,000 followers on Instagram. And I am tickled pink to introduce you to my friend and colleague, Johnathan H. Miller.
I am so happy to be here. And you know, the best thing about ring lights, we're never really pink, even when we're tickled.
I don't have a ring light on. I have to get one. My ring lights make me look blue. So I have to get one that has a warm undertone, I think.
We'll talk about that separately. That's a whole different thing, the tech, but it is all about the lighting. Got to have the lighting.
Johnathan, first of all, let's start with how did you manage to get 13,000 followers on Instagram?
So now that's the very fun part of things is that I do have two different brands. I have the Johnathan Media brand and I have the J Squared company brand. So around 2014, 2015, let's fly back in time here a little bit. I started doing this thing with video where I started posting online every morning around 7:30-ish. When we would go out to do a job, I would post the before the install and then after the install. But I started doing all these videos. The agents in my area hated video. Everybody I knew in our industry hated video. But I knew it was going to be a big thing. And I also knew Instagram was going to be a big thing because so many people were, I started the staging business because of Pinterest. Well, Pinterest took off and was so big. Then when Instagram was created to kind of compete with Pinterest, I was like, I like this one better. I'm going to jump on this platform. So I was one of the very first people on Instagram. And then I'm doing these videos on Facebook every day. And then they started transitioning over. So it was literally video this entire time. And then in 2020, everybody starts doing video. And so the followers, they came about because I had pretty houses. Here I am doing this authentic, real content. I mean, there are old videos of me falling down, trying to walk backwards. There's one where one of my employees shoves me in a pool. I mean, but it was just really real and very authentic with that. And it's like when people ask, I'm like, well, one, because I've been on there since since it was created, but also because of video. And now when you can't open your social media without seeing someone on video, it kind of makes sense. And it's like, yeah, I preached this to you people. I was like, get on camera, do your videos. And people were like, yeah, it'll go away. It'll go away. And I'm like, it's not going away. We like reality TV too much. And I saw that was around the same time that started. I was like, this is going to keep going. And it's just going to keep going until it keeps going.
So what do you think has changed in Instagram? Because to your point, way more people are doing video. It's kind of, it's a must-do kind of thing now. What do you think has changed in the way that people do Instagram now to attract their ideal clients as opposed to just gain followers?
So it comes back to, you've got to look at what you're doing. This is preached in early courses. It's like, find out who your ideal avatar is. Well, that's also the thing is you've got to make sure that you're not just following industry professionals and that, because we can all love and like everything that's posted. But if the people who are going to pay you aren't coming in and liking it, then you've got to make sure that, those people are also seeing that content that you're putting out there. So you got to go look at their interests. And it does come back to research a lot of times. I mean, I'll watch and see what if there's a realtor I want to target or a company I want to target. I start watching what they post and how they post. And it's like the content they post and what they're posting in their stories tells you a lot about what they want to see. And that algorithm, if you're putting something, if you're doing, let's say, a new reel on something, say you're doing it on kitchen design and you're wanting to target one of the big builders whose primary focus is on kitchens, then you're targeting them without targeting them. So then your stuff's going to show up in their feed and they're going to be like, huh, maybe this Marianne chick, maybe she's onto something. Maybe she can design this kitchen better than we can, and let's hire her. And that's how, our business became just word of mouth. We've only ever done a couple of paid advertisements, and it's literally because of those follower counts.
So are you finding that you're being aggressive as far as following some of the builders in your area, for instance, if you want to work with the builders or the realtors in your area? Are you just working on that magnetic pull advertising, like
So
organically?
organically, I'm not doing anything to go after them. I've got a big thing of, I want to be chased. I'm like, you need to come after me because I've built this brand. I've worked my butt off to build this brand to where we are wanted. And,
Mhm.
about 10, 15 years ago, we had a realtor who said they are the most expensive in town, but they're worth it. We've not done a property for her probably in about 10 years. She still says it. She did end up going with somebody cheaper, and her properties look like crap. But she still gives us that endorsement. And that is our reputation around town is they're expensive, but no one does it better. And to build that reputation, because you got to have that after. It can't just be they're the most expensive in town. You've got to
Mhm.
have that endorsement afterwards. And when people hear that, especially from very discriminating people, and one our top agent is probably one of the most discriminating agents in town. And when he gives that endorsement for us, people are like, okay, yeah, that's who's using that. And it's the same with our second agent. They're like, oh yeah, we want our properties to look like hers. And so
And to your point, Jonathan, this is the thing that I think a lot of home stagers and designers are missing when they're pricing. But they're worth it. So but they're worth it is not because you are like all the other stagers. There's things that you do that differentiate yourself so that people see your value and people will pay for real value. Can you speak to that?
yes, that is one of my favorite things because people are always like, well, they don't really understand that what they're selling is their talent. The client's coming to pay for access to you. There are certain things that I see when I walk in a room that you may not see when you walk in a room. And I've done this with other designers and stagers. We walked in and I've been like, this, and this. And then they're like, well, yeah, but did you see this and this and this? And I'm like, I can see that part. But a lot of times it's the same eye. That realtor or client may have the same eye as you. And so they're going to be able to sell the property better if you're adjusting that perception to be something they're excited about selling at the same time. And when somebody asks, what's the one thing you have that no one else has? No one else has my eye. People can copy it, they can knock off the designs that I create, but there's always going to be something missing. There's none of those dupes. Like whenever you see the big post of it's like, this is this price, this get it for cheaper. But when you look at the cheaper one, I can still see the difference. I'm like, yeah, when you put it in a room, it might look good, but there's still not that extra little panache that, like Nate Burkus and Jeremiah Brent add. And people are like, okay, well, we can knock that off. And I'm like, you can knock anything off, but it's not going to be that full picture unless it has that designer specific eye to it. And that's where it comes back to, people are paying for a design. And a lot of times they think that they're calling it staging and they're like, there's no design to that. And I'm like, oh, but there is. And if you don't realize that, that's the problem. You don't realize how many hours of invisible time you're giving away when you're sitting there trying to figure out what you're going to use in the house. And I think a lot of that comes from the problem, especially in the staging world. People come up and they're like, "Oh, I'll give you $1,000 if you can do this house." And they're like, "Oh, $1,000. That's exciting. Oh, you can use this stuff in your own house. Okay, well, I already own all that. So I'm going to go make $1,000 off stuff I already own." They never think about, oh, well, I need to pay for my time. I need to pay for me to take this stuff over there. Oh, well, then if I get another job, I'm going to have to buy more stuff. while I sit on the floor because all of my furniture is out. And that's how almost all of us started. I mean, I used to rob my house all the time. And that's the problem is it starts out so much we see that $1,000 and we think, yes, this is great. I'm making money. But then 6 months down the road, we're not. But we've already committed to that $1,000 price.
So I definitely want to do a deeper dive into profitability and pricing and your book and really go into that. But before we do, can we talk about staging and design? Because it's two different mindsets, but yet there's blurred lines there. To your point, the principles of design do come into play with staging. Could you talk about that for the listeners? Because a lot of the listeners are stagers, and some of them are stagers that design or designers who want to add staging services. What's your perspective on that?
So when I started out in the interior design world, before I ever remotely went to the staging world, if you were a home stager, it was dirty. It was like somebody who was a theater actor that suddenly started doing soap operas. It was looked at as being you were literally you were sacrificing your craft to go in here and do this like mass produced job. There was no real talent to it, blah 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 blah. And when I went into it, I was like, you know what? Pinterest is going to make us all extinct as designers. So I need to make sure I have a revenue stream. So I'm going to add this on as a service because I can do it. But the problem with that too is that when staging was created, it came from a realtor who did not have a full design background, but also who didn't want to pay for an interior designer. Well, when you go back into history, which I do cover this in the book, and I know like when you read the prologue, I give you a full history of this because it started out in I think it was 1913, model homes, the World's Fair, when they started creating model homes. When you think about it, the first model home, it's a full scope design that you're doing on a model home. Then you're furnishing it, you're literally staging it, putting it together. So it's the staging
Window
world was
treatments, all of that.
exactly was birthed from design. The only difference is it became a watered down thing at one point because it was like, well, I'm not going to pay for a designer to come in and give me a model home every time. But here I have this new construction house we're reselling in a model home community. It needs to look just as good, but maybe we don't need to do every room. And because you're not coming in and you're not doing a full scope floor plan, color plan, window treatments, design, it was like, well, we need to call it something else because we can't say that we have this resale home designed at that point because even though it does get you a higher price point now, then it didn't. So it's like, well, let's bring in some things. Remember when it used to be that let's bake some cookies and put that in. If you think about how it started, it was small, tiny little things. Let's do light station. Let's put some accessories here. Let's bake some cookies for the open house. Then it was like, well, let's add some stools. Let's have some places for people to sit. Let's have them, a table here to put their purse down on. And it graduated into where it was like, okay, well, yeah, it might not have started out as a full scope design, but it did come from a model home design. So it really is design. It just kept growing more and more. And then it was that you didn't have to have any type of education or certification to do it. You could be based on natural talent. Well, I've met so many designers in the world who have more natural talent than I will ever have in my little foot, my little pinky toe, because it's just there. So you don't have to have a degree in something to be able to be a phenomenal designer in it. And I've met lots of actual home stagers who graduate into being full scope interior designers. They literally just get their training started here and then it goes right on up. And then it's like, yeah, I did that for a few years, but then I moved on to this. And it really was because the money wasn't there. Because when you start out in staging, we'll talk more about this, you don't know how to price anything.
Hmm.
So
Let's go there because I think that one of my missions, and actually just a little, I just want to insert something here that working on a program called the Confident and Profitable Home Stager. And one of my missions is to elevate the staging business and to elevate the leaders in the staging business, which is all of you. Everybody who's doing this business is a leader and an authority, and they have to start owning that and getting out there. And I'm going on a little rant and letting people know about the value that you really bring and why they should care, because that's when stages will be getting paid what they're worth. We have to own that and we have to articulate our value effectively. So let's go there, Johnathan. You wrote the book Why Underpricing Kills Design. And everybody's got to get a copy of this book because you all need to read this. And I don't care if you've been in the business for a long time, many stagers aren't charging what they need to make in order to be profitable. And they're not charging what their value brings. I want you to preach it, Johnathan, right now. And what do you want the audience to know?
Well, okay, so people often think that if you're going to do a staging project, which is still an interior design project, that you're only going to be charging for a few hours of shopping to get that finished room, the furniture rental, and the moving in and out. So they think it should be cheap. They don't realize that in reality, they're paying you for thousands of hours that no one sees. You've got the space planning, the revisions, the sourcing, the knowledge of what you're doing, those vendor relationships, measurements, logistics, troubleshooting, budgeting, and knowing what materials are going to work, knowing your scale and proportion design principles. And it's the ability to walk into a room and immediately understand why it's not working the way it is now. Either it's empty or with the owner's furnishings, and they're paying you for your experience of that. There's 100 moving parts. All those things I just named, you should have a small line item for, and you should be charging something for. But most people are like, oh, well, I'm just doing this flat rate, and I'm not covering any of that. I thought that, when I went on the weekend and I bought those lamps, I have them in inventory. That's great. And I'm like, that's a sourcing hour. You didn't charge for that. You still got to make something off of that product, because good design, it's not just decoration. Good staging is not just decorating a room. That's why sometimes I'll see some of these houses and I'm like, you just hit all the fixed assets. Every fixed asset in this home that you're selling is hidden by a giant flat plant. How is that helpful to the seller? Because they're not buying your giant plant. They're buying that, beautiful molding, that fireplace, the insert of that fireplace. They're buying that. You put this gaudy screen in front of the fireplace they're buying, and they're never going to see this benefit of it's got this beautiful glass front on it that, for this to hide the gas, to hide the fumes, all that. And, it's a full-blown strategy. There's psychology, there's function, there's restraint, there's execution. And when I wrote the book, it was never about charging more just to charge more. I wrote it because there are talented people, as you know, who build these businesses. We've met them at our conferences, and they look successful from the outside. But in the backside of it, they're exhausted, they're underpaid, they're anxious, and they're literally subsidizing their own companies with some other form of revenue that's coming in. And I know you and I both have been guilty of it. But when you see us in person, makeup will be flawless, hair will be on point, clothes, shoes, everything. I'm not going to let anybody know anything's going wrong. But that doesn't mean that I'm not stressed to the max sometimes because I screwed up something. And it happens every day. And I'll even tell you this quick one. I undercharged on a house recently. I gave them 3 free rooms because when I went in and I did the preview, I'd already created the invoice and the contract. The agent added on 3 other rooms. I didn't double check it. I just hit send. It happened to be that it was a logistics mover who owns a moving company in town. He paid immediately when I sent that invoice, and that is always a sign to me that I didn't charge enough. But I still didn't know. I run into him when we're, at the house at one point, and he's like, you charged accurately to a certain point, but you should have charged at least $3,500 more for that move in and move out fee. And I was like, what? And he's like, well, I own a moving service, and you didn't charge correctly on that. And I thought, what? Here I just wrote a book on pricing correctly. So I go back and I look at the invoice and I'm like, we gave away 3 free rooms. I didn't even charge anything because I didn't double check myself. So we all still make mistakes in that way. I might be like telling you how to do it, but that doesn't mean that somewhere, literally 6 weeks ago, that I did not make a mistake on a line item and have to eat the cost of something. But I've also got to still make a profit off that job somewhere else. So that's going to come into the marketing because everything that we did in that house sold for $80,000 over asking. And I have those results. I have those numbers. And I rolled one out this morning. You'll start seeing them over the next few weeks. I'm going to start marketing them a little bit more on Instagram. We had one a couple of months ago, $255,000 over asking. Because what I'm doing is I'm actually able to focus on tailoring these homes to where they're giving that perception and that lifestyle, and people are buying them. So people are paying me for that access to get to my talent. And that's what everybody should be at. You've got to kind of confront what's uncomfortable and you've got to look at your business and see if it's healthy or if it's just surviving.
Yeah, and I think to your point, the articulating the value of having your specific I is really important. I also think that what's really compelling to the end user, to the person that's going to hire you, is the $255,000 over asking. And that is so important because that's like a real case study of the impact of when they use you, what happens. And that's what people care about. They care about what's in it for me. And so, really beating that drum that you've made this amount of money over this is like, I think, one of the best marketing things that you can do.
It is because when you look at it, though, pricing's not math, pricing's a belief. When those agents look at that post and they see 255 over asking, they're believing in my talent at that point. They know that I'm going to be able to get them more money. And that's where so many people mess up because they're looking at it as being just an Excel spreadsheet. I hate math. Everybody's going to pay more for something. People, the Louis Vuitton purse did not start out being a $5,000 or more purse. I mean, it was literally the belief in that luxury of having that
I
product in the.
love this. Like mic drop right there, because the value isn't that the Louis Vuitton purse. It's like, whatever they produce that purse for, there's such a disparity between what you pay for that and what they produce it for. Whereas the same purse that's a knockoff, because it's not Louis Vuitton, the brand
uh,
is not going you're not going to pay the same, right? So value is so important, and value is in the perception of the eye of your ideal client. So how do you articulate that? You do it in so many ways, Jonathan, because you're a media personality, you're an authority, you're a leader in the business. And I think that more home stages, they don't have to be media personalities, although they should be
yeah.
on their Instagram in that they're delivering great value to their prospective clients. But I think that it's about really owning what you bring to the table and creating that value. How do you then, what would you recommend to home stagers? And I ask this of a lot of my podcast guests. A lot of my home stagers, the women and men that I coach, are struggling because they're trying to price based on the competition. What would you recommend to them?
So your pricing, it tells the market how seriously they need to take you before you ever speak. When they get that quote's right in front of them, it's not just about that underpricing is not just hurting your revenue. It's changing the perception of you. It's telling people they can take advantage of you. It's telling them, one of the things that whenever I was state president for RESA, that I tried so hard to get the people in the chapters to understand is that it's almost a unionization in a sense in your area of getting together, talking about your pricing, not being scared of it being competition, because competition is something that's going to keep you at that lower level. Collaboration is going to lift you up. Whenever I sit
Mhm.
down and I'm like, okay, this is what I'm charging for this house. This is what you're charging. Let's figure out a way to make this kind of consistent. Because if it's consistent in the market, people don't have a shock moment when they get the pricing for a quote. Vary it by $100, $200. Um, I learned this literally from Orlando Reyes at my first RESA conference. He talked about how he and the stagers in his area would work together. One didn't have a job, the other one did. They would come and help each other out, but they also priced within like $100 of each other. And I thought that was one of the smartest things ever because then again, you're consistent across the board. You're setting a pricing standard in that area. My area, if we go down the road to Washington, D.C., their pricing, if we have a $5,000 install here, it's at least $10,000 to $15,000, just hour and a half, 2 hours down the road, because they've all worked together and they know their pricing structures. But so many areas, they don't want to talk to each other. They're so scared they're going to lose a job. And it's like, you're going to get more when you talk to each other, when you help each other out. It's not just about who can do the most houses. It's not about who's trying to get the most jobs. It's literally, they're not failing because they lack talent. They're failing because nobody taught them the architecture of a profitable business. And that's where we need to go back to where the house is built. Look at the architecture of what you're building and see if it's actually going to be sustainable for a long period of time.
Right, because to your point, and not to make this episode all about that, because this could take forever, but you got to drill
That's
down
the tone of it.
everything that you pay for with your overhead, and that has to be somehow into every job that you do, so that it's amortized through the jobs that you do. So that, we think that you forget about your marketing and your training, your coaching, all of the things that you do in your business, what you pay your staff, your warehouse, all of the expenses have to be amortized into the jobs that you do. So it's not just about, oh, I already own this inventory, so I can price this really low. Although I have worked with stages, and there's always caveats to everything where their inventory is just sitting there and they're trying to build momentum in their business, and I'm like, do a special, do something to get that inventory making money right now. It doesn't have to be, this is my forever prices, this is a special I'm offering this month, 2 months for the price of one or whatnot. Get that inventory making money. So what would you say to those new stagers, because they're the ones that are very much afraid of losing business to their competition, but they're not making enough money for it to be sustainable?
So I'm not telling people to become arrogant. I'm telling them to stop building businesses that depend on their self-sacrifice to survive. One of the best things I ever learned at a recent conference was that if inventory's sitting and not making you money, it's not worth it being there. Um,
Mhm.
and I'm a part of a luxury staging group that Michelle Minch runs. You are as well. And that was one of the things she's like, get it out. It doesn't matter what you charge at that point. If it's sitting there, it's not making you money, but make it exclusive. If we have
Right.
tons of inventory coming back, I grab the phone and I start calling. I call it a reward system in a sense. I look at the phone tree as how it is, and I'm like, okay, who deserves a deal? Who has brought in so much business this year? And I call them and I'm like, hey, you've got this little tiny $300,000 house here. Let me do that for you. I'm going to do this for you at this price. I know this is lower. This is not going to be a repeat thing, but let me do it for you at this price. And they're like, okay, why are you going to do it at that price? I'm like, I have furniture going to my ceiling right now. I need somewhere to put it for a minute for it to be there. So it's not here. So then it's like I'm making money on it, but I'm not throwing out some big promo because I learned this the hard way. One year I did put out a promo, and then I have a woman who comes that she was a good client at the time. She had a luxury listing. She wants it for this $2,500 sale that I'm giving at this point. And I didn't put a disclaimer in the sale. I just wanted to get the furniture out. And it's like, no, I'm going to make this more exclusive. I'm going to call the people and be like, okay, here's the deal I have. Do you have something? Before I ever call them, I've looked up on realtor.com. I've looked on their website. I see what listings they have empty. So I already know they have 3 houses that are empty before I ever call them. So they believe in my talent. So then when I say, hey,
This is pure
here's
gold.
this price,
This
here's
is
this price,
this is
they say
pure
yes.
gold. I love what you just said. I mean, this is, you're getting me to look at this completely differently. And I love that you pick up the phone and call these people. So what you're doing is you're rewarding your preferred agent partners for their
Exactly.
loyalty. So it's a win-win. And this is what we love in business. And you're not just putting out a blanket promo. You're saying to them, this is something that I can offer you. I love that.
Here's the problem with a blanket promo. That blanket, it never goes away. It gets folded up and it gets put in a closet. It can be 5 to 6 years down the road. So and so agent's going to come back and they're going to say, well, you offered this deal one time and I really want to use you, but I just haven't been able to until now. But this is my budget. That blanket promo is giving them a number that you're willing to do. They're saying you're willing to say, hey, I'll take $2,500 to do this. You may be so busy at that point, you can't. You need to be charging more the busier you are. And like seasons, if we're in a busy season and we're booked back to back, you need to be charging more for those things to go out because you're probably going to have to add on a day, maybe work a weekend. You're going to self sacrifice something. But if you just keep saying yes without adding any monetary value on it, you're not helping yourself grow in that sense. And you're definitely not helping your bank account grow. You're just helping your
And
stress level and
that's another thing that
paying
I
off
think a lot of stagers don't know, that I appreciate you bringing up, is that in your busy season, you can charge a premium. Now, how,
100%.
how do you
That's
handle
why wouldn't you?
pushback from your
Why wouldn't
Right.
you? I mean, every other
Right.
business in the world does it. We, I'm going to answer what you were about. We get pushback because the agent's commission never changes. They have that one rate, and even though it changes per listing, they don't look at it as being that you should have a price increase of 1 to 5% or anything in general with that. It is looked at as being that we're consistently only charging 3% for this. You should never raise your prices. And it's like that. These born negotiators are locked in this headspace of saying, you should never charge more. It's like, no, no,
Hmm.
no. Like, I'm in high demand right now. I literally
Hmm.
have so many jobs booked, I can't even blink, and I'm going to have to hire more people. So if I'm going to do that, then I need to be charging more for this because I'm also going to have to buy more inventory. And
Hmm.
so often
Hmm.
I see stagers go out and they'll literally go spend every single dime that they're making on a job on new inventory, thinking they're going to make it back. But then the
Hmm.
market slows down, all that stuff goes into their warehouse and it's sitting there. They're not making money off of it at all at that point until the next
Right.
season. So then the next season happens. Well, they've had all this stuff sitting there. They've got the inventory that so and so else doesn't, but they're charging more, or they're not charging more, they're charging the same or less. So how's
Hmm.
that helping your business grow? You have a
Yeah.
product somebody else wants. So people are paying for that accessibility and they're not, well, they're not paying for that accessible. Low pricing it doesn't make you accessible. It makes you questionable. And that's where I really just want to shake some people and be like, why? It's not about being liked. It's about having a business that you can survive on if you have no other form of income.
But here's the thing, and here's where there's a disconnect for people, especially when they're starting out and their confidence level is not as high because confidence is built on action and building something and putting yourself out there and, kind of the school of hard knocks, let's face it.
Uh-huh.
So there's a disconnect because they're seeing that their perceived value in the market isn't like, for instance, where yours is, right? Because you've built that reputation, you've built that authority. So I think that it's really important for it's kind of like they have to leap before they see the net and put themselves out there and decide that they're willing to walk away from jobs that aren't willing to pay them because what's going to end up happening is they're going to work with a lot of PETA clients who don't appreciate their value and they're going to end up doing a lot of work for very little money and get burnt out. And so it's a confidence issue at the beginning where even though they may not feel confidently, they have to act as if.
Exactly. 100%. And I learned this when I entered the staging industry. I had a great design portfolio. And at that point, when you entered staging, it was like staging's not design. So you're preaching that so it literally stripped away a lot of that from me. I'm like, okay, well, staging's not designed, so I've got to make sure that I go into this way. And I did turn a lot of jobs down, and it was because I knew how much money I could make as an interior designer on a job, and I knew what my design rate was. And if you're not equaling out for that, then it's not worth what you're doing. And one thing I learned is that a little formula, a little something that's not even in the book. You take the price that you've been paid, your last actual paid job by someone else, whatever that max amount of money you were making in that last job, you take that, and that should be your starting rate for any job because you're now running your own business. If you're going to make money, why wouldn't you just stay in the other job? If you're going to charge less than that, why would you take a pay decrease to go run your own business? So if I'm making, $50,000 a year, I should be paying myself when I go into my business. That should be my set pay rate, what I got paid at my last job. So that way
Not
there's something to build on, not going into it and not paying yourself for 10 years.
Jonathan. My computer is like it's dying and I can't get it to. So, anyways,
It still says we're being recorded, so that's good.
I know. So, before we go, and we're going to have to come back,
I'll
can
come
you
back
tell
and we'll
the
do that.
listeners about your book?
Okay. So why underpricing kills design? And literally, there's a body on here because I have been in houses. I've literally been in houses staging where I just felt like I was going to lay on the floor and let them draw the chalk outline. This house was killing me. I never wanted to see it again. Once it sold, I was like, I don't want to see that inventory. That's a bad memory. And I would walk in, I would talk, I would have all these amazing conversations with these home stagers and these interior designers and it's really for any creative who's trying to figure out pricing. It's very direct, it's very honest. It's not for the faint of heart because I'm telling you literally what you're doing wrong. I created there's a pricing guide in it, to find your minimum viable rate. So that way, you know the minimum of what you should be charging for your business to run correctly, for you to make a profit at all. We were talking about this a minute ago, and the book, it tells you unexpected things. People don't really understand that there are unexpected life things that can make you need money. But it's very direct. There's some fun things in it too. It's like, okay, why, one of the oldest industries in the world, you do not see any type of sex worker going out and giving a free consult or a free preview. And I talk about it because I'm like, okay, here's the world's oldest profession, and they're making way more money than you. And it's because they know how to charge for access to their services. Now, I'm not saying anything remotely negative about that industry. I'm saying we can learn from it. Because if you have to like you were talking about self-worth a minute ago, and so many people, they disguise underpricing. It's that fear, and they're disguising it as a strategy because they don't believe in themselves yet. And you have to fake that. You believe in yourself enough to know you can run a business. So you've got to believe in your talent enough to know that you're worth getting paid. And if you're not, then there's a problem with that, because you've got to really examine if this is for you in that sense, because otherwise you're literally hurting other people who need to be making money.
I totally agree with you. And everybody's got to go out and get that book. You all need to read it. I will tell you, he is such a pro, and his advice in this book is dynamite. And you have to go get that book. Johnathan, I can't thank you enough for being here, for being my guest.
I want I want your listeners to take one thing away. People deserve to have a business that actually sustains their lives, not just a business that consumes them. And you and I both know that this business can literally consume you, eat you alive, burn you out, cost you millions of dollars in hair color, to fix all the stress that these realtors cause. You know, I'm not a natural brunette anymore, and it's a lot of this job, but I like looking like one, so I pay for it. But
Well, you look damn handsome if you ask me.
Botox and hair color. It's like, we gotta look the part. And it's like,
I love you.
And it's like, I'm out there sweating too. I'm like, I own this business for a reason because I love the result. I love seeing people's faces light up, but I'm also not doing it just for fun. And I mean,
right.
As that whole thing goes, you should enjoy every day you go to work because it should be something that you like. You should also enjoy getting paid.
Totally agree.
This episode of the Home Stagers and Designers on Fire podcast has ended. Be sure to subscribe for more strategies on how to attract your ideal clients, up-level your business, make more money, and still have a smokin' hot life. And don't forget to review this show so that we can continue to bring you top-notch content. See you on the next episode.